Hello and welcome. I'm John with Internetic, and today we're doing a little light hacking. If you watched the Ransomware 101 video, this is what we were setting up for. If you haven't watched it, you should probably go back and check it. It's got a lot of good details on the technical side of what we're looking at here. We won't be hacking like in the movies, but this is what really happens in life. In movies, they always show cool special effects and techno music and deep bass bumps and saying "we're in" and all that stuff. And some guy, like two guys on an NCIS keyboard typing away at each other. That's not what really happens. Hacking is generally boring, is very mundane, and takes us a lot of grinding through the process. It's a lot of just looking at data logs and hitting your head against this thing 100 times until it does what you're trying to get it to do. So this is going to look kind of different than what you expect. There were no cool effects or music unless you provide your own. You could do some beatboxing. I don't judge. So let's get to it. First, we got some PowerPoint to set the stage, unfortunately. So, as a disclaimer, this is for educational purposes only. We will not tell you how to do this. The lawyers would murder me and make sure they never found my body. So, because that, some installation and configuration steps are left intentionally out, just so that we don't get in trouble with the law and the legal side. We are using real tools used by real criminals. These are not like things we've made up. I went out and did a lot of research over the course of about a couple weeks or so to find, to test, and to configure these real tools that are used by hackers. These are not like the really cool ones. They're, well, cool being kind of a relative term here. There are professional hacking groups that have their own tools that are expensive that we can't get our hands on because that would set us up for some liability and some other issues. These are the tools that are more publicly available. So there is a concern there as well. So the professional hackers, people who make a business of this, their tools are a lot more powerful, a lot harder to prevent, a lot harder to detect than these tools. But these tools are available to anyone. If you do the right Google searches, if you go to the right places, these tools can be found, configured, and tested fairly easily. And as a big reminder in the big bold red letters here, this stuff is illegal. Do not do this stuff unless you are a security professional. Even then, like in my own case, we go through a fair amount of safety measures and legal checks and isolation and such so that these things will not affect production environments or get out into the wild where we can get in trouble. So a little bit of a setup for this, so you can tell kind of what we're doing and what we're looking at. Excuse me. This is an idealized setup for this demo. So we're kind of stacking the odds a little bit in our favor, but not too much. We don't have an IDS, IPS, a firewall, any filtering of any kind, next-gen AV means antivirus, or ring fencing in place. I also logged in as local administrator. So while that sounds like we're making it very easy and like we're taking all the challenge out of this, realistically, this is what we see in many environments when we come in, when we're brought in. I would like to say that everyone out of the box is secure and they're good to go and they have no problems. But in most cases, probably greater than 80% of the cases, when we're brought in to work on someone's system, this is a setup we'll see. It's usually an older Windows 7 system that's no longer supported, or hopefully is a current Windows 10 or Windows 11 system, but they do not have a stateful firewall or a border firewall or the host-based firewall turned on, or they are running as local admin. They don't have filtering in place. Next-gen AV means a behavioral monitoring antivirus rather than just heuristic antivirus. They just use Windows Data Defender. Windows Defender is legitimately very good at what it does, but is not a managed antivirus where someone like my group is watching and see what's going on, or is it's not monitoring for behavioral things rather than just fingerprinting or things like ring fencing. Like I said, it makes it sound like we're stacking the odds too far in favor, but realistically, this is what we would see in most cases, and probably what a lot of people who are watching this, they're set up as well. So our network is going to be an isolated virtual network. It means lives only in my own computer. So this is all being hosted on my own system in its own virtual lab. So it cannot get out to the world. It cannot get out into my production environment. It cannot affect my computer. This is to prevent it from just basically pissing off our own internal safety measures. I played this a little bit at one point to see what happened, and we got a lot of alerts go up real fast where our own safety systems go, hey, that should not be here, and they shut it down real fast. What they're supposed to do. On this network is only our demo systems. We have an attacker system and a victim system. Those can only talk to each other. They have nowhere else to talk. Our attacker system is a Kali Linux virtual machine. So Kali is a very useful tool for people like me and for other people, wink, wink. It is a penetration testing system that comes out of the box with a great deal of tools. So you install this, and what you install is usually it's an operating system in its own right. It comes with things like Metasploit, MSF Venom, a lot of great like Meterpreter, and those are the ones I work with most. So the ones I can think of off the top of my head. But generally, tools used for what's called penetration testing. That is good team hacking, what we call blue team, where red team is usually good guys too, but they're being the hackers. Blue team are the defenders. If you're thinking of like it's like paintball, I guess, but like team-based sports. Kali Linux is used extensively for that sort of thing, so that people like me can just very easily turn this thing on and go, rather than go through and fiddle with 100 configurations and messing with it. It just makes my life easy. The victim computer is a virtual Windows 10 environment. It's a fresh build. It doesn't have a lot of stuff installed on it. It's just Windows. We loaded Windows, we loaded Thunderbird. That's it. It is a fresh build without anything weird going on. We didn't turn anything off or screw with it. We just ran the ISO, which is the install medium, and turned it on. It's fully patched, so it does have the latest patches available to a Windows 10 computer. I don't want to say like we are running an old, easily exploitable, known vulnerability version. We're not. This is actually the current version of Windows as of, I think, June. I think it's the last major release. Also, we patched it so that it would stop bugging us to patch it, because that would just be annoying during this video. So kind of how this demo is structured, we're going to have 3 parts. Part 1, we're going to see from the victim's view how the infection plays out, receiving and opening the phishing email. So we're going to have Thunderbird opening an email. The email cannot actually be sent, where you have a file on there that has an email that we created, and see how that looks. And what does it look like when the system has actually becomes infected by the attacker? Part 2 is Recon, exfiltration, and ransom. So this is where we are being the attackers and hacking the victim, and getting their system, looking around, stealing what we can steal, and running ransomware on our way out. Part 3 is where we're back to the victim's view, where we're seeing what ransomware looks like. Excuse me. So why I like showing this is a view that most people would never get to see. Hopefully you never have to see what it looks like when ransomware gets on your computer. That is just a really bad day. That's the same feeling you get if you get pulled over by the cops. When you're driving on the road and the blue lights turn on, you get that sinking feeling, that immediate feeling of cold and, oh my God, this is a horrible type of feeling. With ransomware, it is much like that. And not only does it not go away, like eventually cops are going to drive away and you got to pay a ticket maybe. That feeling sticks around because now you have a very large bill. It's not like a bill, but a demand for money. And you have to explain to your business what happened, and maybe to your IT department why this has happened, or you're going to have to explain to a bunch of people why you've got ransomware and how you've ruined their days as well. At least with a ticket, it only ruins your day, hopefully. With ransomware, it ruins a lot of people's days, and in some cases, actually brings down companies. So we'll be seeing that. We'll also be seeing from the attacker's point of view. So this is a view even less than ransomware, is a view you very rarely get to see of how this plays out for the attacker. What do they really see when they're getting into your system? What type of access do they have? What can they do using their tools? The tools we're using are being somewhat rudimentary because we're not using the really nice paid stuff, but you will see how much access we have, and it's really extensive. So that being said, I'll again say this is educational. Do not do this, but we'll jump on to the victim view. So we're looking at our victim system now. This is in a virtual machine, Oracle VirtualBox. It makes my life easier and simple to use, and it's free. Hard to argue with free in this. So this is a Windows 10 system. For all intents and purposes, this is a full system sitting someone's desk somewhere. Has the standard files you would expect, emails and Explorer and some work files and some passwords and stuff like this. Hopefully you don't have your passwords in a passwords file or nudes here, but we have put those there as examples for the attack side. Also, these are not unusual for us to see in the real world. We have on numerous occasions found a passwords document or an Excel file on someone's computer. Those are a very good time for an attacker. This makes their life so much easier than having to steal your credentials somehow else. Finding a work directory, that's pretty common. It's me full of things like PowerPoints and Excel files and your worky type stuff. Those are just things you would normally see. So we're going to open our email here as the victim in this case. We got this email from Amazon. It looks pretty legit. And just by glancing at it, this looks like a real email. Some things to note, it's going to be kind of hard to see depending on your screen resolution, how good your eyes are, how far away you are from your computer. But you'll notice that says Arnazon, not Amazon. That's an R and an N to make an M. This is a common way for for attackers to kind of get around your suspicions. You look at it and go, hey, it's Amazon. At a glance, it looks right. It's not Amazon. There are ways of also using Cyrillic characters to have an English character that's actually a Cyrillic character that works as well. So I'm the person here, the victim here. I'm like, hey, I'm just working through my day. I got an email. Well, that's weird. I am John, but I'm not John Hartman. What's this? He bought something. Well, that's weird. He bought a book called My Enormous Penis. That's weird. Okay, it's a book. Why did I get this? I don't know. That's kind of weird. I mouse over it to do my normal, like you should, check. It goes Amazon.com, 8,000. Well, it's still Amazon. That's good, right? Book viewer. Well, it's a book, so that makes sense. What is this thing? Let's get a giggle out of this. So it downloads the file. And I will give Windows 10 credit for this. It does tell you several times, are you sure you want to do this? So most people will say, that doesn't work. That's not real. No one would do this. Most people won't. Most people would not come through and do this. As an attacker, they're not playing on what most people do. They don't send out one file. They send out 5 million of these emails, or 10 million, or however millions they can send out. And like marketing and sales efforts, they anticipate most people won't fall for it. But if you send out, say, 5 million and 5,000 open it, and of those 5,000 people, 1,000 of them are infected, or they pay the ransom, and the ransom is $5,000, $10,000, $1 million. That's still huge on their investment of 5 million emails going out. They probably spend $100 setting up this infrastructure to handle this, and they get a return potentially in the millions of dollars. We're seeing I wouldn't call it industry necessarily, but the returns for the bad guys per year, or losses for companies, is in the billions of dollars per year. I think the last one I saw for 2021 was the estimated losses to ransomware was upwards of $20 billion for the United States alone, for 2021. So this does work in the real world. While most people will not be caught by this, enough people are, or they just don't know any better, or they're not trained to deal with this, or just like basic education type of thing. I'm not like training, like sit down for an hour in a thing, you like drill into like OSHA, MSHA, or HIPAA training, but just basic identification of this sort of risk. But back on topic. So we got our file. I'm the victim. Book viewer. I want to see what this is all about. Let's open this file up. So again, Windows 10 is going to say, are you sure you want to do this? This is unknown. This is actually not unusual for many programs to download, where it's going to say, I don't know what this is. So a lot of people will do run anyway. It depends on if it's well-known or if the file is signed. In this case, this file is not signed. I created it. This is my dropper. If you remember from Ransomware 101 previous video, this is my dropper file. This file, when we run it, will infect this computer and open a file. So if I signed it, it probably would go through fine. It likely wouldn't show these other prompts up here as well. I'm not entirely sure on the behavior of that in one of the last patches and such. But the signing would help it. The signing is kind of hard to do as well. So you can see it doing some stuff, and it did open a PDF for myenormouspenis.pdf. So this is a legit song. That kind of made me happy. I went out looking for a way of making this email attention grabbing and realistic. And I found this, and I was like, I have to use this. This is just too great. So kind of my as the attacker's view, what I'm trying to do is make this look realistic enough that someone will open it, and attention grabbing enough that someone will do something with my file here. And I didn't want to attach the file itself. Most mail filters will not allow an executable through email. Many email browsers will also outright block it. I know Outlook absolutely will not let you send an exe raw file through Outlook. It will require you put it into a zip file or something else. Thunderbird, I'm not entirely sure on. I imagine it's the same. Kind of the reason we're using Thunderbird here is it's free and it works. So it behaves just as easily as any other browser. It's just what I use in this case. I'm cheap. I don't know, whatever. So I wanted to grab like a marketing and sales effort like most companies do. I wanted to grab the attention. I want to get past their early defense of suspicion and make this look realistic and something that will make them want to open this. In many cases, that is a gift card scam or an invoice scam or your credit card has been compromised type of thing. In this case, I went a little bit more subtle, a bit more, I wouldn't say low tech, but I just went with a book download. This may or may not help my open rate for my victims. I don't know. This is not something I do normally as an attacker. I do like phishing simulation, not this sort of thing. What we've got here is this has opened. This has run. So if you're the victim, this has done everything you expect this file to do. You just go, hey, I opened this. This is funny. I might forward this to my friends. As the attacker now, I would be more than pleased if you forward this virus to all your friends. But as of now, this system has been compromised. The C2 command and control framework or platform is running on this system. And visually, we don't know it. Like there's nothing has changed on this computer that we can see that says we are compromised. This computer is now part of a botnet. And the bad guys are going to start getting in there and rummaging on our files. And as remembered, they're going to be looking for these. They're going to be pulling these files down to do bad things because they are bad guys. It's not like Despicable Me, where the bad guy is actually a good guy at heart that does sort of bad things. It's not Robin Hood. These people will get in here and grab these files and blackmail you with them or blackmail your company with them, or all the above, and take your passwords and get into your other stuff to move laterally into other things. Additionally, this computer is now compromised so that we can use it as a stepping stone into more things. We'll jump into that into the next bit here, actually. Now we're going to see this from the attacker's view. I have reset our Windows victim machine so that we can see the packets come in, the traffic come in to see how that actually looks rather than the log information. So our view now, we're actually working inside Kali Linux. This is a virtual machine like Windows. It just works really well for me that way. So we've got these three screens, well, with three terminals open right now. It looks kind of hackery, if that's an adjective now. So let's look at these screens to actually do. This screen, I have an agent already running on this Linux machine that's checking back into our C2 server. So this is a compromised machine. And in a controlled environment, I've compromised this own machine just so we can see what this looks like. Now, if you remember from Ransomware 101, we talked about beacons. This is showing how that beaconing works. So this machine is sending out an idle, or is sending out a check-in, and it sends it over to this server, which is our own server here. It gets back, you have no work to do, so it does nothing and goes back to sleep for X many seconds or minutes or hours or weeks or however you have it configured. So it's sleeping for 30 seconds. So it only checks in there 30 seconds, give or take some period of time to say, do you got work for me? The C2 server says no, he'll go back to sleep. So that's how you monitor for beacons. That's what that actually looks like when those beacons come through. So this window here is actually our web server. Now, because I have these systems isolated, they can't get out to the world or out to another system. So I'm actually running everything on this one Kali server just to keep things simple and easy. So this is a very basic Python web server. It's very simple, it's very basic. It would not hold up in the real world situations, but for these purposes, it works fine. In real world, you would, or the attackers would use like a compromised website, a known website. We've seen, if you look at a few of my scam spoofing videos, that's where you often see where the attackers have taken over or gained access to a legitimate or previously legitimate website and they're hosting their devious, their naughty, their threatening files on there so that they can get around things like DNS and web filters, reputation checks and such. Or just also there's cheap. They don't want to have their credit card information associated with the domain because it tracks back to them. So if they can compromise someone's website, that's much safer for them and it's easier. So that is, we'll see when we infect our Windows machine again, we'll see the web traffic come through here where it's requesting executables. At the bottom here, so once we actually get rolling, I'll make this bigger. This is Merlin. This is my C2 server. So this is actually where we're taking control over the target machine. So I'll jump over on my other screen. We're going to run the dropper, the book viewer file like we saw previously in the previous segment here. So it's running now. This will take a few seconds while it goes through and downloads and runs everything. If the demo gods cooperate with me, that would be amazing. There we go. So we are getting, so this is a get command. So our dropper previously downloaded has reached out and downloaded mynormuspenis.pdf. So it's a get command with 200 and is getting agent windows. So mynormuspenis.pdf, I will never get tired of saying that, I'm sorry, is our kind of our innocent file. That's one we want to show people that will open, as we saw in the previous video, or the previous segment, I mean, that opens to show them that there's not something nefarious going on here. But it is also downloading agent windows. Normally, you would not call your Trojan agent windows. You would call it something else, like something innocuous, like services or whatever. I call it that because it makes it obvious to me as I'm going through this presentation what I'm looking at, just so I don't get confused. In my case, I'm not going to worry about what it's called. I know it's supposed to be there. So that has run through, and we can see now the bottom window, this agent is now checking in. So that Windows machine is infected and is now checking into our Kali server or our C2 Merlin server saying, hey, I'm here. So we'll make this bigger so we can get more stuff. So now we're going to work in command line a little bit here. So with Linux, a great deal of things are in terminal. There's good and bad with that. It is a little annoying sometimes. I can't just click around. But terminal has a great deal of power, and if you're good enough with it, you're experienced enough with it, you can move very quickly through these screens. I'm just doing a little bit of cleaning up on my other screen here of my notes. Okay, so let's look at what Merlin actually does. So we'll look at help. So these are the out-of-the-box commands, so the default commands we can play with. We have things like agent, we list all of the agents we've infected, which is actually the same as sessions. I use sessions in this instead of agent. It just shows the same information. I just like that more. Banner just shows a login banner. Clears, removes our jobs, groups. So we have a bunch of things. So the ones we care about really are interact, jobs, listeners, and sessions. So we'll focus on those. The other ones we're not going to care about. So interact is when we actually want to control an agent. So a bot or a botnet. This is what you do if you have 100, 1, 2, 3, 1,000, 1,000,000 of these computers checking in. Interact is what you use to control them. That's when we move from different contexts. Context being, am I working on the server or am I working on a particular target or a victim or an agent, kind of depending on how you want to call it. Jobs are when we interact with an agent, we can give it a job. It means a command to run. Jobs are how it lists those. It puts these jobs into a queue. So when the agent checks in, it gives them that job to do. So we can go through and display our jobs if we have, like we had more listeners or more, not listeners, more agents out there, we would want to see what jobs are running, which ones have completed, so we know where we stand. In this case, we really only have, I think, 2 computers infected, so we're not going to have to really worry too much about that. Listeners are how you set up the server to listen for incoming commands. So we'll look at that in a moment as well. Queue is the same as job, essentially. But actually, queue assigns a job to run in the jobs list. I usually don't use Q because it's easier to do through the interactive menu. And sessions lists are infected agents that are checking in. So let's look at listeners first. Well, let's work our way through this. Listeners list. So I'm not going to show you how to configure this, but this is one of our listeners. So I've made a listener being when an agent checks in, it talks to this particular port. So you can actually have multiple listeners, like it's listening across different types of traffic. So for HTTP or HTTPS or DNS, or this actually supports several others. I don't remember what all supports offhand. I think if we do help, it might show it. No, you'd have to actually look at the wiki for this. There is a list here. Actually, no, there it is. So HTTP, HTTPS, HTTP2, HTTP3, H2C. So these are the protocols this server recognizes that we can host or we can run our botnet or our framework through. So when we make so list first. So this is what we are listening on right now. We are listening on interface 10.0.13.86 with port 443, that being SSL or HTTPS. When we go back to change our context again, so we can look at, again, let's see what we got here. We can do sessions now. So we're actually going to start moving into controlling an agent. So sessions list how many agents we control and what we know about them. So we can see we have an old agent here. That was one I was playing around with. That one is not checked in 38 minutes. So that is gone essentially. So I can actually go through and move that. So we've taken off our list. So we're no longer caring about that one. You can see I do love the autocomplete. So I don't have to type out this long GUID. That is one of my favorite parts of this software. I appreciate the developer doing that very, very much. That makes my life so much easier. But so we can see what's going on here. So we have a Windows server. That's our demo, or not Windows server, our Windows victim checking in with user demo from this desktop using agent Windows with process ID 656. Last check-in 5 seconds ago. We can also see our Linux machine here. That is the one we're running on right now, just so we can see this works on Linux and Windows. And Agent Linux, that's what the program was called when I made it. And process ID 1239. Now let's jump over and actually interact with one of these agents. So interact. Let's do A10 and autocomplete. So now we can do something with it. Actually, let's do help first, so I can show you a command. So this actually has a lot of commands that you can run out of the box. There's a full wiki for this. The developer wrote a very well-made wiki that explains everything you can do, where you can do it, what context it runs in, all that stuff. It's the good and bad of that is the good, it makes my life very easy on learning this software. The bad is it makes it easier for people who are not on the side of good to do this as well. It just is what it is, I guess. So we can sort of see some things we can do here. We can like change directories. We can download a file from the target. We can see what their network information is, gather any information we have about them. We can change their signatures, so like encryption, to get around various, or to move things around to avoid detection. There's a siren going by, or a fire engine going by. We can do lists and directories. So that's like dir in Windows, ls in Linux, so we can run that across. We can do NS lookup to do DNS lookups. We can do a great deal of things. So anything you do command line on the Windows machine, you can probably do here, and a few more things as well. And it does actually list here at the bottom where you go for the wiki that tells you all these things. So from here, we can do a couple things. Use. Actually, no, I gotta go back for that. Sorry. Use module. There we go. There, I was in the wrong context for that. So these are modules that are pre-built, or exploits that are pre-built we can run against an agent. So this makes it very approachable, very low barrier to entry to say, I have an agent that's compromised, or I have a Windows victim here, and I can run these things just by doing use module, this name. I can do a little configuration here telling it what each of these modules has information they need, and run. And you can run things like privilege escalation or lateral movement into other servers or downloading all their credentials. So it just makes things easy to automate these things. So if I get into a machine, I can very quickly say, give me privilege escalation so I can run as administrator. Do credential dump. So it'll dump out your Chrome credentials, Outlook, Thunderbird, Internet Explorer, Edge, Safari, Firefox, dump all those and grab those so I can use those. So I don't have to sit around like all the time fiddling around in my command control here. I say, give to me, and I have them. And I can do things like escalation or persistence or adding basically it's more stuff. I can also make my own modules if I wanted to. I can go in here and create my own modules to do these things to speed up my effort. So instead of having to hand do these things, I can say, okay, give me their credentials, grab everything from their desktop, run the ransomware. It just makes life easier. So we'll jump back to our interact with our agent there. That's what I forgot that is run at the different context menu. Okay. So we have info. So we're looking at our agent now, or our victim machine, and we got some basic information. What status is it? This delayed means it just hasn't checked in for a little bit. That's fine. It's not dead. So dead means it has not checked in for a prolonged period of time. We run it again. It'll probably switch. No, I just want to switch to active, but delayed means it's still checking in. Just its last check was a little late. What type of system is this? It is a 64-bit Windows machine. We're logged in as demo under this computer's host name. Our GUID for the user, what level of rights they've got, what process we're running under, their IP address. So that's their internal IP address. As part of the recon phase of this attack, I would want to know what company or who owns this machine, so I can tailor my approach to them, because I don't want to be telling them like, yeah, you're a small mom and pop shop and we want $5 million for your files. They can't pay that. They literally do not and can never have that amount of money. So I'd want to see what their external IP is, their public IP address is, or some other method of saying, who is this? Who's this machine belong to? So I can properly look for the right files. Like if they're an engineering company, I need to look for drawing files, for engineering files, for anything proprietary like that. If they're a financial company, I want to look for customer records. If they're a mom and pop shop, probably financial records or tax information. If they're an IT company, I want to look for credentials. I want to look for what tools they're using to manage their fleet, things like that. So we want to make sure that we know who these people are or what machine we've compromised, so they can properly tailor our approach to them to where we look for information. We can see when that machine first checked in versus their last checked in. This helps us so we know how long we've been in this machine. So as I said in a previous segment, these attacks generally don't run in a few minutes. They usually run over the course of days or weeks or months, depending on how sizable a target this is. For a small company, as I said, a mom and pop, they're probably going to drop ransomware and run. Is a large company, say like Google or IBM, which are very, very large, they're going to hang out for a very long time to get persistence to see what they can gather before they get detected. As much information as they can, proprietary information, HR records, credentials, server stuff, anything that's really worth the high value to them, like the whaling rather than the phishing type of thing going on here. We can see their agent version, their wait time, the wait time skew. So wait time is configurable. We can change how often this agent checks in with our server. In this case, I would set for 1 second, just because I need to check in sooner. This would risk detection in a real world environment. 1 second would be way too soon, so it would be very easily detected. But for our demo, it just makes this thing go faster, so we don't have to wait for the check-in. Our skew is it checks in one every second with a 3-second give or take buffer on either side to help prevent detection. 1 second would obviously be detected no matter, but if you gave it like check in every hour with a skew of 30 minutes or every day with a skew of 6 hours, it makes it much harder to detect. And how often we check in and if we tell it to commit to kill itself. So let's see what we also got help in here. Looked at that. So we can actually do some basic commands as well. So we can say, who am I? So we got a few tokens listed. So tokens are credentials essentially. So what am I running as on that host? So we can just ask it, like, who am I? Oh, I didn't give any commands. So let's do token, who am I? So again, it takes a second for it to go, for the check-in, and that skew. So you're talking 3 or 4 seconds per job, essentially. There we go. So we have asked the computer, what context am I running in? In this case, we're running as the demo user, as an administrator account. We can kind of go through and say, as what essentially it helps me as the attacker say, what privileges or rights do I have to run on this computer? So it gives me more access. If I'm running as an administrator, that helps me greatly because I can do anything I want now. Because if you run a program as an admin or as a local administrator, that program runs in your rights. So if you run as a user, it can only do what you as a user can do. If you run the program as an administrator, it can do whatever you can do as an administrator. So if you run my compromise agent here as an administrator, it's the keys to the kingdom. I can do anything I want. So that makes things very nice. So from here, I kind of want to go, where am I? Where am I in this system, like in their file structure? Because they could run this program from anywhere. Granted, my dropper is supposed to put this file in a very specific place, so it always runs from the temp directory. But let's verify that. Where are we actually in their system? So we are in C users demo app data local temp. So from here, I would want to do more recon where I start just navigating through the system, seeing where things are, what we've got. We're not going to do a whole lot of that because that actually is an extensive process. Recon, if you're trying to make a great deal of money out of this, recon will be one of your longest phases as an attacker. Because you really don't want to be detected, because once you start taking over actions, that's when the people will notice you're up to something. So you want to know, like, what do we have on here? What is the value of this? What files are out here? What file types? Where am I in their network? What security measures do they have? Who am I as the person on the user? Am I an HR user, a system user, a front desk user, a salesperson? So it gives me a context of where I'm going, so I can do more phishing schemes from that, or pivot off of that and say, okay, I've got this person's personal details. Now I can use that in an email to pretend to be them to get more money, to get more information, or to get more stuff. So we switch to the C drive here instead of LS, which is basically a directory. It shows dir in Windows. Say, show me what we got. Well, unfortunately, this is really just standard Windows stuff. Nothing surprising there. But we know most people have a bunch of stuff on their desktop. So let's jump to there. So you'll notice I'm doing 2 slashes. In Linux, use basically the / to move around directories. Windows uses the / and you have to use 2 slashes because you're escaping out that slash, so that my command here will actually work. It's just a way of doing it, because this works in both Linux and Windows. So we've moved over to the desktop. Oh, sorry, I had force of habit, not dir ls. And we're going to see what we have on the desktop. And the desktop is usually the most common files that people are working in from day to day. So I want to see, like, what does this person have on the desktop that is useful to me? So right off the bat, this is a treasure trove. Now, obviously, we have our Amazon email that we saw as the victim. That's the email they opened. We also have my passwords. So they have a passwords file. As an attacker, that makes you do a little happy dance inside. This can be, I often see these as text or Excel files. We tell them as Internetic, we say, don't do that. Use a vault. A vaults are, that's a different video. Vaults make us much more secure, because passwords are hard to remember. They're very complex if they're good, and you have 2FA. Vaults just make that easier, so you're not using the same password, recycling it everywhere, or in this case, writing it down on your computer. It is honestly safer to write it in a notebook and put it in a locked drawer than to leave it on your computer like this. Because if it's in a locked drawer, someone has to have physical access to your desk to get at this. And that's very unlikely. And they'd be easier for the waste when they get the password. I mean, if they took a lead pipe to your fingers and knees, you're giving their password. If they're physically trying to get access, they've moved past that stage in like the criminal pyramid already. So leaving his files on your computer like this as a my passwords, that is much easier for a criminal to get, and with very low risk. So coming into an office with a lead pipe is very high risk. Inspecting someone's computer and giving it passwords is very low risk, if any at all. So as the attacker, I'd want that. I'd want this anything in this news directory, anything in this work directory, for different reasons. So passwords I can use to get credentials to log into someone's email, to their webmail, into their financial institutions, into their insurance, into their HR systems, and if I'm really lucky, into their servers. So I can do much larger attacks. Webmail, such as great for what's called a business email compromise, BECs. So this is a common scam that we're seeing more and more of, and it is a big deal. So it's more done through phishing sites rather than describing someone's passwords, but both work. If you're an attacker, you're not going to say, I'm going to limit myself to just this one attack type. You're going to use everything you possibly can to make the most money possible. Because once you're burned, you've burned this bridge. You can't go back to it, because undoubtedly they're going to pull in an instant response team like us, like Internetic, and we're going to go through it and check every system imaginable to remove that infection, to make sure it doesn't happen, right? It doesn't happen again. So it's once you hit that certain stage as an attacker, you got to assume that you're burned. You got to go. You got to move forward with this. So we want to grab as much as possible. Lost my thought there. So a business email compromise is where you log into a victim's email as them, and usually either grab payment details or intercept a conversation. Where we usually see that is they're communicating with a vendor, or usually a customer, really. So the customer says, we have payment for you. Where do we send this payment? Is this good for like high value items? So tens of thousands of dollars. That's usually what they target. So the customer says, we want this item. You say, okay, it's $10,000. Here's your wire transfer details, your SWIFT code, your whatever. And then the attacker jumps in and says, oh, sorry, we are wrong. You need to wire it here instead. It comes from your email, using your signatures, using your wording, your background, all that stuff, so that the customer, and now another victim, does not know. And in almost every case, when that money gets wired out, it's gone. It's very rare to get that money back. It can happen. We've heard it happening, but it's extremely rare. Also, so things like nudes, anything that's compromising to you. So nudes are great for blackmail. Like, if you don't give us access to your servers, we will send out these nudes. If you don't give us money, we will send these out. Or just to be vicious. Some of these attackers are not just in for the money. Some are just dicks. And that does happen. And work files, of course, as a general exfiltration and make more money. If I can grab all their work files, anything financial, anything sensitive, anything like pay records, or just generally anything a business uses on a day-to-day operations, is useful to me as an attacker. So I can gain more information about this company from a recon point of view, or I can use it for further compromises, or to get into other systems, or is to sell their information. If it's an engineering company making the next nuclear reactor, that's useful for other countries, so I can sell this, or for activism or hacktivism, or this what have you. So I can quickly go through here and just download this file. That's actually how easy it is as an attacker. So I see these files, I want these files, download, passwords. And it takes a few seconds, it's done. And I actually need to grab another terminal here real quick. Actually, not that one. So we can actually view this. So opt. Data agents A110. I spelled the thing wrong there. Op Merlin data agents A10. What did I do wrong? Okay, let's just see if I can do a copy paste of this. It'll make it a little bit easier. Give me the whole line. Copy selection. Both ways drops out what I want to drop out. Yep, there we go. Oh, sorry. That explains it. I was running in the wrong context. So I had to switch over to my root user. There we go. Got there eventually. So we did download that passwords text file, and you can see what they had in it. Obviously, this is demo information, not real information, but you can see if this was real, I would have their work email, their personal email, their bank info. So is it bad times for them? We'll drop this back out and switch back over to this screen. So we can download very quickly their passwords, their nudes, their work files, their email files, anything on that computer that we can get our hands on, we will. And if we can pivot from this over to if they have a network server, we want to grab as many network files as we can as well. Obviously, we don't want to hit these file structures too fast, too hard, because that may become noticeable. So we will spread this over days or weeks where we spend a little time pulling down as much as possible. But say we're done. We've got everything we want out of this computer. We've reconned them. We know what type of company this is now. Let's say they're IBM. Just because that's what I think. The first one dropped in my head. Nothing is IBM. It's just an easy name to remember. Say they're IBM. We're not happy with them. We've found out what company size they are, so we know our ransomware, our demands for our blackmail can be very high. Can be millions of dollars. So now we know that. We've gone through an exfiltrated their data. We've grabbed open source. We've grabbed their programs. We've grabbed their customer files. We've grabbed their banking information. We've grabbed everything we can out of that. So we've got everything we can out of this. So we're essentially done with them. So on the way out, we want to burn this bridge to do as much damage as possible and to steal or to try to get more information. So we're going to upload our ransomware. You notice I'm looking at the other screen, so I've got all this written out so I don't forget where I am in these file structures. Just so the demo goes better than instead of me flailing about to remember where I put things. Okay, so we are uploading our ransomware. It'll take a couple seconds here while it does that. So you can see the jobs I was talking about earlier. So I created a job for this agent. So job blah, blah, blah for this agent at this time. The job will run. And the job will go out there and say, this job is ready for you to do. So it's not like a bulletin board almost. The C2 server does not send out information to those agents on its own. It goes up a billboard and says, I have a job for you. The agent checks in and says, oh, look, there's a work for me. Grabs the thing, says, okay, I need to do this. Goes and does it and reports back on the next session saying, I have finished this job. What else have you got for me? So we've uploaded this. So now we want to run it. So really, I could automate all this using modules. I'm not in this case because I did not want to deal with that. It's just too much effort. And also this shows what I can do. It's not just laziness. It's also so you can see it's actually me running command rather than me saying, run this, and it just does everything for me. I want to actually show me doing these things. It'll take a few seconds while this runs through. So we've uploaded our ransomware file, and we're running it. In this case, I actually did upload it to their documents directory, just because I want to run in the privileges that I know this user has rights to. There are goods and bads of that. Because if I'm running in an obvious place, it makes it easier for an incident response team to find this and to reverse engineer or to learn about it. It really does not work that often. If it's a high class, not high class, if it is a well organized criminal business or criminal organization, they make their programs very hard to reverse. They're usually incredibly encrypted, incredibly complex, so it's very hard to see what's going on. Even if you do reverse engineer it, they usually write their encryption using a essentially non-reversible encryption scheme. With non-reversible meaning you can't reverse it easily through brute force. It means you have to know the key that the encryption software is using to do this. So in this case, like my cryptor file here would go through, encrypt their files, using a key that it randomly generates and send that key back to me and says, okay, we've encrypted this person's stuff with this ID. Here's their key so that if they pay, we can give them this key back so they can decrypt their files. In most cases, that never happens. We'll talk about that in the third part of this, and when we look at the actual victim view again. So this is the Merlin agent. So a little bit of review here. We're running in Kali. It's just very easy to set up. You can sort of see the various. I think I minimized them. Yep. So we'll jump back so I can get back to that. So you can see the agent check-in here. So that's one of the compromised agents, my web server running, and the command and control framework. So it kind of needs at least these two. You need a web server and you need your C2 framework to really do this attack. And this is what the victim would be doing. They're just sending these packets back. So this type of software is very easy to use. Some software is easy to get as well. Merlin is actually intended for use by groups like mine to learn about this software. It's more of a pen testing tool, penetration testing tool, rather than bad guy software, but it could be used that way as well. Getting the bad guy software is not that hard either. These are it's essentially an e-commerce type of thing. Things like Cobalt Strike, I think like $5,000. That sounds like a great deal of money, but if you can make millions of dollars from this, then it's a good investment. So it is a good business process. It's a good business outcome for these attackers. Is very low risk, very high reward potentially. It's pretty rare for these attackers to actually get caught, unfortunately. So to really fight these groups, you have to increase the risks to them that they will get caught or they will not get some money or it becomes harder. So it's just not worth their time. But I said in this case, I can roll up a Merlin server in about 2 or 3 minutes. So I actually have this scripted now to where, because the demos, I've done this over and over and over again so many times, I can roll up the server in about 2 or 3 minutes. It took me about a week to learn it all, to really get accustomed to it, to where I was comfortable doing a demo with it. But once you know it, once it's in your head and you've done it a few times, it's very easy to do. And then all you gotta do is you gotta tailor your email and send it out to 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 people and basically wait for money. I mean, still, there is a risk that the FBI or your local enforcement may actually do something about it. But we see the news. That's pretty rare. We see major ransomware groups running out of like Russia, and they are pretty much running with impunity as long as they don't target Russia or Russian allies. So that's a bit of an issue. But jumping back a bit, so we've seen how this software works. We set up our server, we infect a computer, it calls home, and we start running commands against it. If you want to dive more into commands, actually, it does have this wiki here. So you can read through all the things this can do, what all these modules do, and how easy it is for the setup. I will throw in a thing in. This is for educational purposes only. Do not do this on a production network. Do not do this if you want to get caught. Don't want to get caught, whatever. This is illegal. We're doing it in an isolated network like this for our own testing purposes, for demonstration purposes. We are so allowed to do this as long as I don't target someone with it. If I actually started targeting people unknowingly, illegal, especially considering I'm in the United States with potentially United States targets. So this is what the C2, the command and control framework, looks like. This is how easy it is to work with. And the next time, we will jump back in a second here, and we'll switch over to the victim view. So we will see what this ransomware looks like when it hits this computer. So I'll see you in a second. So we're back on the victim's computer now, and obviously you can see things have gone bad for their day. If you've seen pictures of these, if you've seen them on the news, things like that, this is ransomware. Cryptor has jumped on here, is demanding payment, and says what files has it encrypted. This one has a weird little bug where it pops under. You can see it went through and encrypted a lot of files. We can jump into our work files here, and it's going to show, yeah, these files are locked. All your work stuff, whatever was attached, whatever was on the network drive that this computer can get to, these have all been encrypted. You're not getting those back. So this is what ransomware looks like. It pops up and says your files are encrypted. You have to pay us to unencrypt them, and we'll send you a key back. And when they're encrypted, they do this. Different versions, this can actually be configured to say different things. In this case, it's just .locked. It can be .crypto, whatever. It depends on the attacker's preference or what software they're using. We're using encryptor, which is a very basic ransomware. Even with this basic one, though, we actually can do a lot of things. We can tell it to encrypt network drives, to any drives that are mapped. You can tell it to encrypt flash drives. We can tell it to remove backups. No, this is a free one. This is not one we paid for. This is one we are able to very easily grab from the internet, and it works. It's not great, but it works. So if you pay, which we don't recommend, so it becomes a business decision in a lot of cases. But what in almost every case happens is if you pay the ransom, your files may or may not get decrypted. It depends on how good that the attackers were in testing their software, whether or not they actually care whether your files get decrypted or not. If you pay in enough time, because some of these things will be floating around, like a ransomware, I guess, could be floating around the internet for days or months or weeks or months, and you get it, and by the time you get infected by it, the attackers have already been caught by the police or their network has been shut down. So you may pay them, but it's not going anywhere. You've lost that money. So even if you pay them, you can't get the decryption key because that attacker has gone. They have been arrested, or they have decided to shut down or rebrand. We've seen a few of them rebrand their names these days to avoid like scrutiny from basically the police or law enforcement of various varieties. But if you do pay them, they'll give you a decryption key. So in this case, it actually drops the key here. This is because it's for demonstration purposes. So we can tell it not to do this if we want to. Go in here and tell it, okay, let's decrypt it. And it will go through and decrypt your files. This one is really quick. I like this because it's pretty fast. For demonstration, that makes my life a lot easier. So it goes through and decrypts it and gives our files back. So we see our files are encrypted now, and we got our files back. Something to remember in this, though, is while we have decrypted our files and hopefully business can return to normal, I think I lost my tangent somewhere in there. From a business decision, let's jump back a little bit so I can finish that thought before I lost my train of thought. Where it's become a business decision is if you pay, let's back up a little bit. What the ransomware is trying to do is make it so that it hurts enough that you're willing to pay them. Because if the ransomware infects your computer and there's nothing invalid in your computer, you just nuke it and move on. You wipe the hard drive, you reinstall Windows, and you move on with your day. They will make sure that this hurts your company enough that not having these files will hurt you more than the payment to them. If you're losing $1 million a day without these files and it costs you $5,000 to pay them, you'll pay them because that's a cost of doing business. And you will probably talk to your insurance company and just say, hey, this is what happened. We need to pay our ransomware insurance off. The problem with that is, as we saw, while we decrypted these files, obviously the C2 is still running. They are still in our system. They are still on this computer. They're still rummaging around in our files. They're probably not just on this computer. If they've had enough time, now as an attacker, they have moved into your servers. They still have presence. They have what's called persistence in your systems. So yeah, we have paid them, but they're not gone. And especially if you paid them, they will continue blackmailing you. Like, we don't see this just in cybersecurity. Blackmail in general, a blackmailer doesn't usually just say, oh yeah, you paid me, I'm gone. They'll say, hey, you paid me, so I'll know you pay me again. And you'll continue paying me. I will have more and more and higher demands until you don't pay me anymore. And then things get really nasty. And that's when they start doing things like release, not just in more in cybersecurity world, they release your files. In the not cybersecurity world, they start breaking knees or something, equally or worse. So my suggestion, in not speaking as the company or as legal and all that, is to not pay. This is where you have to have good backups, because even if you pay, they will continue ransoming you. They will continue to demand more until you have no blood left to bleed, no money left to give. That's kind of the horrible thing about this. It's not just one and done, and you move on with your life. This will continue haunting you for a good long while if you pay, even if you don't pay. Because in this case, what will normally happen here is, say you contact your insurance company or your IT company or us or any other MSP or your security company, whoever. This is actually a start of a much longer process for you. So we're moving from, like, the attackers have had 90 days or however long they've had in your system to do bad things. And you've got ransomware now, and this has ruined your day. It is not going to just ruin your day now, though. Say you pay it or you roll back on backups. It's going to take days or weeks or months to go through and vet and clean and check every other system that you have. It's not like they're going to say, oh, we got this one computer, we infected this one computer, we stole your stuff. You're going to be dealing with the fallout of that for a very long time, be it through checking your systems, through PR nightmares, through compliance issues. If you're like HIPAA or FERPA or PCI or SARS-SOX compliance, you'll be dealing with government compliance for a very long time, of them trying to figure out what did they steal, how many people does this affect, what is your fine. Because in addition to your ransomware, the government's going to want to take their fine out because you didn't do your part to protect yourself. They're going to say, what PCI, what HIPAA files did you lose? Because those fines can be massive. So not only are you dealing with ransomware, now you're dealing with the fallout. And that takes a very long time and a great deal of money to play out. To you never really, like, an example is if you've ever had your house broken into. The house, like a burglary or a snatch and grab from a burglar or robber or whatever, it may be 30 seconds. They get in, they get your stuff, they leave. But even if insurance pays, like they broke in and stole your TV, even if the insurance pays for your TV and everything's been put to rights, you have your TV back on your wall, back on your TV stand, and everything's back to how it was, inside, you will never be the same. You will always have that feeling of, my house was invaded, was violated. So I will never feel quite as safe as I did. This is no longer my sanctuary. Someone broke in and took my stuff. The same goes for your digital home, your computer, your servers, your network. You will always have the suspicion now of, are they in my computer right now? Are they watching what I'm doing right now? Who is doing what to my systems? Even if, you're totally safe, your computers are totally fine, they have totally cleaned everything out, insurance has come in and put everything back to rights, and everything's back to fresh, clean paint on every surface, and everything was cool. You will always have that in your mind. That's why, my soapbox. Prevention is key. Detection is great when it happens to minimize, to mitigate the effects, but her prevention is key for this. It's not just fixing after the fire happens, it's preventing the fire from happening in the first place. Detection is kind of like, you have your smoke detectors. Great. The smoke detector makes sure that the fire department comes, or you hear the fire. The best is to prevent the fire from happening in the first place, because once a fire happens, no matter what you do, you still have to deal with all of this fallout, all of this smoke damage, all of whatever happens. So user education is the best for that. And as we saw here with our email, there were signs that this was here, that we had Artisan, that we were downloading an executable, that it was not pointing to the right place. This email itself was a legitimate Amazon email that I pulled down and just edited. So that's why it looks better than your standard scam email. Because instead of like trying to recreate the Amazon email, I actually took an Amazon email. I don't know why scammers don't do this more often. It's very easy. But that's where user education and a safe level of suspicion and paranoia is your friend for these, to define these things before right of boom, before very bad things happen, before you spend a lot of time having to fix and re-put together your world, and potentially a media circus and compliance issues. So that's something where my group we like to help. So advertisement time. We have training programs. We have these videos. God, share these videos. Please share with everyone. We make these things. We do this research and there's time to release these things free so that people can prevent this from happening. I would much rather spend my time building you a new server, setting up the network for your new office or something like that, than helping you with cleaning ransomware. We actually will do that. We have no problem helping with cleaning ransomware or cybersecurity training. We would much rather that world not have to exist, to where everything is idyllic and all that. But share these videos. Tell everyone this is what you should be looking for. Look at these other videos we've got out there as well, where it says these are the things that are indicators of an issue, downloading executables, things like that. Because user education is the first and last line of defense. You have your detection and your antivirus and your firewall are really in the middle of preventing it from happening and detecting when it happens. But if a person is like bullheadedly moving forward saying, I want this file about minor's penis, then it doesn't matter how many protections or systems or technology you have in place, if they want to do this, they will find a way. So it's very important to educate your users, or if you're a user yourself, to educate yourself to go out and look for these things, or you're a business owner, excuse me, as a business owner, to take that time to put the money and effort and time, which is a realistically a capital for businesses, but that time towards teaching your users or your staff or employees, however you want to kind of phrase it here, how to watch these things. Much like your staff would, or if you're the staff, I'm kind of conflating a little bit here because I'm switching perspectives. But as a business, we all probably go through sexual harassment training, go through HR training, go through supervisor training, go through MSHA, OSHA training, all these safety trainings, all these compliance trainings to prevent things from happening that will affect the business. Cybersecurity should be handled the same way. Because sexual harassment in the office affects the business, affects the employees, affects the families. Cybersecurity should be seen that way as well. It is a preventable problem, like sexual harassment or safety issues like a wet floor are preventable problems. They're problems that can happen, and with proper controls, with proper training, they can be prevented. Cybersecurity is the same with your technology, with our help, wink, wink, with training, with all these things, you can prevent these things from happening. Or at the very least, mitigating enough so if it does happen, it does not bring your business down. Statistic I saw back in college, it's been forever. So since college, so statistics might have changed since then. What statistic we saw was about 70% of businesses do not survive ransomware within the first year. So I should say that is, if you're affected with ransomware, the lifespan of your business for 70% of businesses out there is a year. And after that, they fail due to loss of money, loss of trust, loss of compliance, loss of customers, the PR debacle, all that stuff. So the attack, like if we're looking through our attack here, if you boil down everything that happened in our attack here, the attack itself was pretty short. I mean, if you skip around this YouTube video or whatever platform this is being hosted on when you're viewing this, the actual attack was like the download and execution of the virus. It's not actually a virus in this case, but let's call it that just because it's easier to say. The execution of the virus was about 30 seconds. So in 30 seconds of this user's time, they did put potentially untold amount of damage to this business, to themselves, depending on where they are in this thing. The attack side was as short as about 5 minutes. That it could be a great deal longer, realistically, in another attack, but you saw what we could do in 5 minutes. And that's non-realistic. The ransomware on the back end of like at the trailing end of all this, the ransomware started running, that probably ran for 2 or 3 minutes. So the total time of this attack, we take all my talking and all my jabbering and everything, all of my pontificating out of this, with 30 seconds, 5 minutes, and 3 minutes. So less than 10 minutes for this entire attack to play out. So I think with that much risk, with that much risk in that short a time, training really should be a top priority for businesses. I mean, obviously not like the top priority over everything, over making money, over doing business, over running the business. But in your safety, in your HR, in your general training support framework, how you want to position that, cybersecurity really should be part of that. Because while you can hope that this won't happen to you, and you can say, I'm a small business, this will never happen to me. They're not going to target me. That's not true. They're not targeting you. Very rarely, I should say. It does happen. They do target people. They're not targeting you. They are targeting 5 million people. They blast the mail out like carpet bombs. They see who gets hit, and they hope it's someone worth their time. Given that risk, given how easy this is for this to play out, how easy is it for me to run this attack to potentially ruin your business, I think it makes total sense from a business, from a financial, from a social economic point of view, that cybersecurity training should be in your rotation, because otherwise you could have a very bad day, a very bad week. The health of your business. Think of how important your files, the trust of your customers, are to your business. So I will get off that soapbox. I'm going to step off that soapbox now. And as I say, I'll cut this one short here. Well, not short, obviously. We've been running for 30 minutes here. I'll cut this one here and just say, stay safe out there. You've seen how this works, how easy it is to do. Stay suspicious. Stay a little bit paranoid. And if you have any questions, give us a call. Especially, let's call it a little bit of analytics in here for the Google or the YouTube stuff. Make sure to like and subscribe to this video. I really do appreciate the viewership of this. I'm not a natural orator, so I appreciate all the well wishes and everyone giving us feedback on these videos. Why am I saying us is because my company supports me doing this by my time has to go into these videos. So I greatly appreciate their support in doing these, and I appreciate your support. And if you have any suggestions on videos that you want to see us make or topics you want us to talk about, submit them. You can call us, email us, or put them in the YouTube comments. It greatly helps us to get this message out. And of course, like and subscribe as always for YouTube, because it helps us get the message out as well. Share the videos, send them out. We're totally cool with that. That's what they're here for. And again, I'm coming back on my tangent again. Stay safe, stay suspicious. Got any questions? Give us a call. That's what we're here for. Stay safe, everyone.